At the end of 2017, my family went to go see a Russian constructivist show at the Art Institute in Chicago, and I was inspired by this tension of sort of exactitude and the imprecision of expression. Der Style Menagerie combines elements of the early 20th century art movement along with origami drawings and is really meant as a concept book for what I envision to be a sculpture project in 2019. My town as I remember it is an exercise in imaginary nostalgia. All of the images that are drawn here actually began as digital collages that I put together to create the images. I then traced them and inked them in to give a sense of place that doesn't really exist except in my mind. The never were's are a series of composite portraits. That means I took noses from one image, eyes from another, and mouths from a third to put together faces that look like they're actual portraits but never were. Peoples of the World is a return to a style of collage I've been doing for about 20 years. All of the images here come from Liebig's extract of meat trade cards. These were cards printed beginning in 1872 and given away with a product that I believe is something like bullion. I'm a fan of the children's book author and illustrator Eric Carle. I've seen videos about how he paints tissues to make his artwork, so I use the same technique, but in this case I did images of traditional vessels. Since about the age of 4 years old, popular music has played a significant role in my life, and this volume is really more about the words than the images, and it's an extended essay of songs and how they've shaped my outlook. Imagine you hire a 9-year-old to design a building for you, and the result is something like what you see on Dwellings on Dwellings. On the Record might be the most fun that I had with any Moleskine volume this year. It's a series of imaginary record albums by bands that don't exist. The virtue of digital artwork is that it conceals one's limitations as an artist. However, with this volume, Characters Off the Page, I wanted to display the way I actually illustrate, which is very much like a 12-year-old, but I included it here with characters from books, some real, some imagined. The Danish game is imagined as a series of 31 cards for a game that has no rules, so it's entirely up to the players to decide what happens in it. I've always rearranged the letters and words to make new words, and this is a volume of that. My favorite being the word simultaneous, in which you get the emu smile, or tuna melt motes. Words and Words marked my 100th volume. That means I've done approximately 3,100 pages of Moleskine notebooks with images and an equal number of words from roughly 2014 to the present. So I decided to take a hiatus, and so didn't do any for 4 months, but that was short-lived. Neighbors is my take on something akin to Sesame Street. It's a series of 31 oil pastel on newsprint portraits of people you might encounter in your neighborhood. Often the images and texts in my moleskins have nothing to do with one another. In this case, I went to Wikipedia and found a random article on bandits in central Illinois in the 1840s known as Pirates of the Prairies, and used that article to craft a prose poem. Recombining the illustrations in a Japanese fireworks catalog from the early 1900s was the basis for this particular volume. You may not be aware, but there are extraordinary numbers of fishing lures to be found on the internet. I found digital images and combined them to create these sculptures that exist only in a digital form. I'm planning in 2019 to actually have them made into fiberglass tabletop versions of what you see here. On December 27th, I squeezed one more out just under the wire and wrote the following Wikipedia prose poem. In the law of common law, filing a motion to compel Paris's favorite composer of comic operas, flattened like a mitten. Sandwiched, beating in unison, a meshwork force down by electrical interference from a nearby planet. A vague awareness destabilizes. And right back where they started, a little horseback rider thrown from her horse. Circus tents catch fire to emphasize musicianship, creative differences, collaborating with pirates, attracted by the prospect of booty, delivered bad weather. Visions of coins and legends, maritime aid for 7 years, fog allowed, rebels' remnants' recovery in distorted guise to overthrow 3 legions. As has been the case in recent years, the majority of my creative output took the form of Moleskine notebook pages. In this case, I finished 17 complete Moleskine notebooks, which was 527 images, and then I completed this last one, which was partial, only 24 pages. So in total, I completed 551 images, 551 pages of text. However, there were other things that I did in addition to that. During the 4-month hiatus from making Moleskine notebooks, I borrowed from Paul Klee and traced ink lines onto muslin and then painted them with watercolor to create a series of images, including some very large scale ones based on images from 2017 Moleskine notebooks. More about this in 2019. For many years, I've been interested in the idea of art expanding our sense of what's possible. For example, I had an idea several years ago of inserting giant heads into the rocks along Chicago's lakefront and then into landscapes where people might stumble upon them and, in seeing something new and different, think beyond existing presentations of the world to consider other things that might be possible. So this was the realization of that concept. I ended the year by purchasing some tubes of oil paint and trying it for the first time. These are some early experiments. It's proving very challenging, but it's something to work on in 2019. That wraps up my 2018. I've included it here in the hopes that it can inspire each of you to try and make something if you just have an idea in your head. Wishing everybody a happy 2019. Take care.